Hello, I'm Alison Duana. I'm a goddess asteroid astrologer, and welcome to this podcast about Venus. So I'm really excited because I've already been engaged in a practice for the last 20 days. We reached today with a group of women. Anyone is welcome to join us. And we've been working with a set of mudras that are really healing for the female body and connect to Capricorn. So I'm really feeling in a very embodied way into this Venus cycle in a way I've not experienced before. Yes, so I've been kind of watching and with anticipation, waiting for the Venus-Sun conjunction, which is going to happen on Sunday, the 9th of January, 2022. And this will imprint Venus for her next 18-month cycle. And it's called the Meta Goddess Capricorn Venus aspect. So in this next phase, you know, it's a chance to deeply discover the fullness of what Venus means in Capricorn. But this is an ambitious sign, you know, this is the go-to, climbs the mountain. There's effort involved, there's that step-by-step effort to reach the goal. And with so much chaos and breakdown of the forms around us, it feels like an incredible opportunity for clearing out old karma. Talk about that a bit more in relation to the goddess asteroids, and what kind of karma specifically are we looking at here. And also to invite in new ways of doing things. I like to use this Gene Keys word, the synarchy, the self-organizing way that nature organizes itself with increasing infinite possibilities of expansion and boundless creativity. So it really does get me excited. Okay, so I'm going to share the chart, and let's begin our journey around this chart and just looking at the myriad of exciting things that are happening, because it's pretty awesome when you get down to it. Okay, so I'm going to begin in the third house over here. So because we're all living in different countries watching it, I'm not going to pay too much attention to the houses. I'm in Britain, so this begins in the third house of communication, but in the country you're in, that might be different for you. Okay, so let's begin here, because we have a exact 30-degree gap between Mars and Venus, and actually in the weeks to come they're going to come into conjunction. So here we have a first marker of male yang Mars energy, exactly 30 degrees away from Venus, and they're both at 18 degrees, and the number 18 appears quite a lot in this chart, so I have a feeling it's significant. So Mars there is in 26 line 2. I really love this gene key because it's my life's purpose. So it's all about the trickster energy, turning things upside down. It has a very Merlin kind of energy connected to whales. and its gift is artfulness, and its city is invisibility, which is always rather an intriguing one. But I think this gift of artfulness is one we can all call on, because as soon as we begin doing things in a more consciously artful way, we're awakening those individual genius talents within ourselves. Okay, so what we also have here is Vesta, the priestess archetype. So she's just entered Gene Key 10 line 1, which is all about beingness. You know, so many people in our world feel that they're not enough. It's kind of crazy, really. Where does that deep permeating idea that we're not good enough come from? Some of the roots are actually in religion and ideas like original sin. So we are rewriting some deep stuff here. Now, the priestess energy is one that historically, over many thousands of years, we can trace back to 6000 BC from the poems of a Sumerian high priest, Enheduanna, that the priestess starts to become excluded, persecuted. You know, that takes on its kind of full horror in the witch hunts. And in the times we live now, it's probably more that the kind of rigid scientific left brain way of thinking has, you know, the priestess anyway has many residual past life fears, but then there's also this kind of fear of being ridiculed. And so many women have come back in this incarnation as priestesses. I include myself in that, and we're learning how to use our power of intention from the invisible realms to create with a subtle awareness, with the subtle quantum field. So this priestess archetype is really a big game changer in the for the future, because the future is created through intention and prayer and creativity. So she's very important. And then we have our Venus-Sun conjunction here at 18 degrees 43 minutes Capricorn is the exact place where they meet. Venus, as I started off saying, is halfway through her retrograde. Well, to be 21 days actually. So she's still got you know, it's 40 days, the whole retrograde process. So she comes into this always in the inferior cycle, she's retrograde. So that's one way you can tell whether it's an inferior or superior cycle, is whether Venus is retrograde. And so she is in between us and the sun at the moment, whereas the superior conjunction, she's round the other side of the sun. But we lost visibility for her on the 3rd of January, so she set as evening star. And then she's going to rise again next week as morning star. So we'll see her in the morning. Basically, if you get up at dawn, there she'll be in the sky. At first low, and then you see kind of more and more of her. And she begins her cycle of descending through the 7 gates of Inanna, and then she'll begin her ascending in long time ahead. October 2022, that's when the superior conjunction will happen. But let's stick with the now. What's happening right now? So I'd like to just read you what Uru Hu said about this point in the zodiac, this exact gate, as it's called in human design, 54 line 4, he said was a really special gate, because in this line, this is where a great mutation or biological mutation takes place. And it's the only one that significantly differs from the original I Ching that he channeled. So this is, he called it Enlightenment, Endarkenment. Here in this most mystical of positions, there's neither an exaltation or a detriment, for in truth they are the same. No exaltation, the Alpha and Omega, the end and the beginning. There is no description possible. Each planet, in this case Venus, will manifest this energy uniquely, with absolutely no guarantee that its effects will even be perceived. However, the potential is always there. The fuel for transformation at its purest level. No polarity, no specific planetary accent, no detriment. The Alpha and Omega, the end and the beginning. So doesn't it just feel like that? You know, it does feel like the end of a whole era, a whole way of doing things as human beings. You know, the way that we have been moving forward very rapidly since the Industrial Revolution. But one of the things about this gene key actually is it takes us from the shadow of greed, which is all about kind of just the need to accumulate. And greed comes from a very fearful place, actually. And it takes us into the shadow of aspiration. So especially in Western countries, this is why we're starting to see so many people wanting more, you know, than just physical accumulation of stuff. People are aspiring for something higher. And this is very, very good news. And this is the perfect energy that Venus is imprinting to actually raise people up, be out of greed, which is, you know, we can see the impact of greed on our planet in environmental effects, in oppression of poor countries. Poorer people in Western countries always are paying the higher price for the greed. But the greed is in all of us, really. We should understand that it's human chemistry creating the greed. And we all have those keys to aspiration as well within us. And what is even more super exciting then is that the city of this gene key is Ascension. So, you know, we've been, what is Ascension? You know, I always feel Ascension as being deeply embodied, spirit penetrating into matter. So when I discovered this is a Capricorn gene key that holds these Ascension codes, that makes perfect sense to me, because for me, Ascension has never been kind of about escaping out of the body to some sort of higher realm. It's been about bringing spirit into matter, living in an open-hearted way, living in a creative way as well, that really honors that we are all faces of the great spirit, the creator, the majesty of the universe. Okay. So that's 54 line 4, very exciting. Now, what is intriguing is that the closest gene key, the closest asteroid to this is Juno. And she is the goddess of of the sacred relationship. So one of the forms, and I'm really feeling into this week after a conversation which is on my YouTube channel with Katrini Matisse. We've been talking about Ceres and Sedna and the myths of Ceres and her daughter Persephone and Sedna, but specifically kind of focusing in on the problematic marriages within those mythical stories. And something Katrini said just like switched a light on for me as to why Juno is here now. So Juno holds, if you like, the energies of all the conditioning of why we get married. Marriage has been an incredibly important part of our development of human beings over the last centuries. If we look at, say, Christianity's reluctance to be inclusive towards gay people, we can see that the church is really trying to cling on with all its might to this institution of marriage, because it understands that this is the stability of the whole form at the moment is through marriage. And if that was just pure, you know, male, female, get together, have babies, live a happy life. Some marriages are that, but so many in the world aren't that and are based on inequality, on many unspoken rules. And I really realized this when I got married myself. And one of the interesting things that happened is my husband at that time, I'm now divorced, my husband at that time suddenly started to do a lot better at work. It's like suddenly, just because he was married, no one had ever met me, he was suddenly regarded as kind of better, if you like. And it was quite interesting because we see this in the mammal kingdoms quite a lot. For example, with elephants, you know, you'll have one male that's kind of chosen by the females to be the male of that, and then the other ones have to leave the tribe, so to speak. So, you know, this is deeply ingrained stuff in us because it's in our whole mammalian way of being, that the married male is seen as the superior male, the one who gets the woman is seen as superior. And there's many other unspoken rules, you know, and depending on which generation you're born in, you're going to have more encoding of these rules the older that you are. And we can see in younger generations now that, you know, younger people are identifying more as gender neutral, you know, not even playing the male-female thing at all, and or bisexual, or, you know, getting into gay relationships, which would have been impossible in previous generations. So you have a whole changing of the whole dynamic of the male-female through that. Yeah, and many women deciding not to marry at all, not to have children, you know, to focus on their career, whatever choices they're making. And actually one of the things Uru Hu predicted was like a serious drop in the amount of people having children on Earth. And you can actually see that manifesting today. But in this next cycle, because the Venus imprinting is totally taking in these codes, if you like, Juno's codes of sacred marriage, this will be a very powerful next cycle where the kind of equality of men and women will be a really key thing. And this might start playing out in your relationship because, you know, you probably got married not really thinking about these things, and then suddenly they're erupting within the relationship. So if you can openly and transparently talk about the issues going on, then there's a possibility of, you know, creating new vows based on better ideas than maybe when you got married, and things that will empower both parties. You know, this isn't about the men losing out. The men are going to thrive also in these sacred relationships in open-hearted, beautiful ways that they've never been able to access either, you know, because men have been conditioned into a certain way. And of course, it is harder for men to let go of it because they're in the dominant position. So it's always harder for the person or the group in the dominant position, could say this about white people too, to recognize that actually their privilege isn't very good for them. so letting go is of that privilege and inequality is always beneficial to every single party, because then we can live in this kind of open-hearted, deeply honoring way of all people. Okay, so here we have Pluto. So Pluto at winter solstice was right conjunct Venus when she went into a retrograde. She's going to be, when she finishes the retrograde, she'll be coming back towards Pluto again. And I have been kind of really focused on Minerva as a higher aspect of Pluto since reading this book by Isabel Hickey, who was an astrologer who was alive and practicing when Pluto was discovered. And I'm really feeling that she was onto something here, and doing quite a bit of research now on Pluto myself, that Pluto and Chiron, its biggest moon, are considered a binary planetary system. This was mind-blowing to me. I've not come across this at all. But then again, I hadn't looked. So you know, all astrologers know the impact of Pluto. That hasn't changed, but it's giving more specific idea that it's a binary feminine wisdom of Minerva, who was this Etruscan goddess, that is what we can come out of that with. So reading about Nyx was very interesting. Nyx is one of Pluto's moons, because Nyx has this really wild orbit going on. So if you imagine our moon, yeah, it's really predictable. We go through the same moon cycle every month. Well, Nyx is the opposite. Like, you've no idea where the sun's going to rise, where it's going to set, and it's like going in crazy directions. And it kind of set off a deep curiosity in my body. I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute while I talk about this. And I asked a simple question, you know, what can we kind of learn from this chaos, and can we tune in to whatever's happening on Pluto? Because there's some kind of underlying intelligence that's stopping all the 5 moons, if we include Chiron is a moon planet, of banging together. And interestingly, within days of asking that question, one of my old friends, Rob, sent me a WhatsApp saying, oh, you must watch this thing on Netflix about Mandelbrot, who discovered fractals. It's called Clouds Are Not Spheres. So I went off and watched that. Wow. And it answered my question. Yes, there is this seeming chaos, but there's this underlying pattern. And the fractal Mandelbrot set, as it's called, is now called the thumbprint of God. You know, so here we have this really amazing understanding, actually, of what this pattern is through Mandelbrot. And what was so fascinating is that because he was Jewish at the time he was living in Europe, he wasn't able to be educated in the mainstream. So he was actually educated by various uncles and stuff, and because of that, and he probably had this anyway, was born like this, he was a very right-brained person, and he just didn't fit in any boxes. And it feels like because he didn't have this imprint of formal education, that he was actually able to think outside the box. Now, for me, one of the good things about the pandemic, and I know it's really hard for parents having children at home, but I just want to point out that there's actually a really good side to children not receiving this kind of full-on imprint of mainstream education, because all these generations of children that have been affected, I predict, will be able to think more outside the box. And it may well be that single thing that really helps us make the next quantum leaps. So don't be too keen to send your kids back into a system that you know, it's going to imprint them, and for many they will have to undo that imprint. And if you notice your child really fighting that at some level, you know, really try and listen to what they're saying, and maybe there's another way. You know, it's not all about being in school. That's what we're told. This is the road to success, but it's all changing, you know, so this is not going to be the road to success for the future. That is pretty much guaranteed. Okay, so Pluto is really, really influential in this whole pattern going on at the moment with Venus. And as I say, this wisdom of Minerva rising. Right, so let's go back to the chart again. Okay, very itchy nose this morning. Okay, so let's have a look here at what's going on in Aquarius. Itchy nose, brain suddenly stopping. It's all part of my Saturday morning. Okay, so yeah, this is lovely actually, because we can see Jupiter here is just in the first stages of Pisces as well, just moved into Pisces. And actually you can see that Jupiter crossed at 90 degrees to the moon's nodes as he entered Pisces, where Jupiter is exalted in Pisces. So this is a time of expansive consciousness going on, expanded awareness. Okay, so so what I was going to say, actually, I've got this lovely new app called Stellarium. And when I pointed it up at the sky last night, I could see this really bright planet there. And I knew it wasn't Venus, because Venus is set now, and it was Jupiter, and then you can actually see Saturn and Mercury on the horizon. So in the northern hemisphere, this was kind of the early evening, maybe around 6, 7 o'clock. I could see them up in the sky. So if you get a clear night, have a look up there and try out this Stellarium app. It's not very expensive and it's such fun. I go around, oh, what's above me at the moment? Okay. So for me, it's very interesting that Astraea, who's also been very much conjunct Venus and Pluto at the time of winter solstice, has just entered Aquarius. This is a powerful point in the zodiac, Gene Key 60. It's got the shadow of limitation, the gift of realism, okay, and the city of divine justice. So for me, this gene key in my contemplations, because it's one of the mudras that we're doing in the mudra sequence, this divine justice is very much about the male-female dynamic coming into a place of stillness or a return to origin. And when the stillness happens and the karma burns off, then we get divine justice. Okay, sometimes that will just happen, but we can actually facilitate divine justice through forgiveness. You know, if we don't need others to repay, if we can reach that point in ourselves, which I'm working on that myself with a particular situation for the last 9 years. So I know myself, this is not easy, but there is a way to open up divine justice. And as I say, it's the release of the other having to pay back, and forgiveness, deep forgiveness of self and others. Okay, so we have this entry point into Aquarius, and Pluto is actually going to enter Gene Key 60 on the 14th of January. Yes, I think it's the 14th of January. And this is going to have quite a powerful effect, even physically, on us. So at the moment in the human design body graph, Pluto is in 61. I only just realized how this thing is going to work in the body, actually, in my talk with Katrini. So watch that if you want the kind of background on this. So Pluto's going to move for 61 in the Ajna center to 60 in the root center. So yeah, Katrini was talking about how if you have an open Ajna center, which I do, an open crown as well, then Pluto would have been creating a lot of pressure around there, and I have sinusitis that I have to work with quite a lot in the last few years. And then, but that pressure is hopefully going to relieve once it moves into the root chakra, but it's going to create pressure in the root chakra. And so we have to learn to work with that feeling, you know, and if yours is already closed, or if you have Pluto in any of these places, then you, as Katrini has, as she said, she's had her whole life dealing with it, so it's not been so challenging. But it'll be interesting to see what the feeling is of that movement of Pluto down right into the root of the body. And I'm feeling glad of doing this mudra practice, which is immensely clearing of sexual energy, because that's the likely thing it's going to erupt, is any unresolved sexual trauma, around, you know, the sexual organs, the womb, the space is the sacral, but they're so intimately connected. So yeah, be interesting to see how, as I say, how that manifests physically. And then we have a number of years to actually work with this Pluto energy there. And really what we want to aim for is opening up a kind of timelessness with the root chakra, learning to live in a much more simple, contemplative way, where your day is filled with pauses and creative inspirations. Yeah, and if it's not, you might feel, you know, if you're caught in a kind of job that has a lot of time pressure, you might start feeling the stress of that even more once Pluto moves. So Pluto doesn't want us in these stressful situations. You know, Pluto wants to bounce us out into a new way of living, really just in the flow of this thumbprint of God. So seemingly chaotic, but it's kind of like allowing life to organize you rather than you trying to organize life. And it takes a lot of trust to jump into that. But I can promise you it's such a wonderful place to live. It's so full of miracles and natural abundance, and you know, you'll never want to go back to the old paradigm once you're in this one. It's like, yeah, but it takes trust, because you know, our conditioning is that we need to work and achieve. Interesting, because these are all quite Capricorn shadows as well that we're overcoming here. Okay, so I'm not going to say anything more about those. Well, let me give you the gene keys, actually. So as I say, Astraea, she's a goddess of new golden age codes. She's in gene key 60, line 3. The beginning of Aquarius there. Mercury today is gene key 19, line 1. So this is the shadow of codependence, and it's about it's about just noticing, again, connecting in with our relationships. You know, what are we doing that is not actually what we want to do, what our body wants, but it's because our partner does it. I was in a lovely group yesterday. In the platform I work on, Soul Tribe, we do a daily call around food at the moment, and it's a winter cleanse, and just talking about like the impact of relationships on how we eat is incredibly profound in and of itself. But it can affect how we sleep, how we eat, how we dress. So what's the real you? You know, what does the real you want to do? And Saturn is in gene key 19, line 6. So we've got a double whammy of this 19 energy. And the city is sacrifice. So, you know, this is a time where things may need to be sacrificed. I always remember this phrase, sacrifice bliss, that I've used in helping me to break a number of addictions like smoking, because you kind of so think you need cigarettes when you're a smoker, and that it's going to be, you know, a terrible sacrifice to give them up. But once you do make that sacrifice for your body, let's say you're sacrificing that toxin for your body's sake, then you do get into the bliss. You know, as soon as you've let go of that idea that you need it, then the bliss arises, and you think, why did I ever feel that I needed that, you know? And always feeling compassionate for people who are so stuck in it. It's such a dangerous drug, and all drugs are dangerous because they make us feel like we can't live without them, and we'd be really happy without them. So whatever your drug is, give it a rest for a while. You know, if it's TV, have a rest from it, and you'll find out you actually feel okay without watching it so much. You know, that's the thing. Sacrifice and bliss. Okay, so let's have a look here in the 5th house. And what we have here is Pallas Athena. She's at 18 degrees. So she's in a relationship here with Venus and the Sun. She's in an exact sextile to them. And she's in a 90 degrees aspect to Mars here in Sag. So she's squaring Mars, and she's in a positive aspect to Venus. Plus, she's also conjunct Neptune at the moment, and they're going to be coming into exact conjunction pretty soon. I don't know the exact date. So Pallas Athena, she's the Bodhisattva energy in Pisces, the warrior goddess, spiritual warrior goddess. Again, maybe we have a theme here of forgiveness, because this is one of the deepest paths of the Bodhisattva, is to be able to forgive. So she's in 22 line 2, and we know that this is the divine feminine, the involutionary incoming force of our times. It's really, really a very significant energy coming into our earthy way of being at the moment. You might see as Sophia, as Magdalena, as Minerva, however you perceive that divine feminine energy. She is eternal, and she is here. So in 22, this is a very powerful imprinting, and conjunct Neptune as well. So Neptune dissolves the old. It's going to complement Jupiter in Pisces, in that this is going to be a very expansive awareness time, especially of the subtle realms. And we may see things going on with the oceans, you know, certainly a good time to send our healing consciousness into the oceans and the rivers, because the healing of the water is one of the prime things we need to do in the times ahead. And you know, we can actually heal it by giving it love. The healing can be instantaneous if enough of us are doing that. Okay, so another wonderful thing is that Chiron is exactly not exactly conjunct the moon, but within the day, you know, would have been conjunct Chiron a bit earlier in the day. At the time of the exact meeting, you can see there's 2 degrees here. This is the exact meeting of the Sun and Venus. There's just 2 degrees between them. So this is what Chiron's been up to, is fascinating. I was born with Chiron at this degree, actually, in 1970. So if you were born around the 1970s, then the early 1970s, I think I'm in my 3rd Chiron return at the moment, because it's had this really long retrograde period. So it's been really interesting, because when I had my first Chiron return, I was on the path of becoming a Christian priest, actually, priestess, and I decided that that wasn't the path for me. It was too limiting. So it's really interesting that, you know, now on the third one, I'm really feeling like I'm finding my place in the world. I'm finding the people who are really resonating with my work. Yeah, so if you born around this time, you're in your third Chiron return as well. So have a think about, you know, what was happening when you were 50 and what's happening now. And if there's still things coming up, it's because maybe you weren't quite aware of them back then, you know. So Chiron in Aries needs a lot of freedom, actually. We are a generation that really resists homogenization, the Chiron in Aries babies born then. And of course, there's a whole generation being born now as well. Okay, and yes, so the moon is at 21 line 1. So these people may be in a second Chiron return. These are people who are a little bit younger, so maybe born around 73 on those few years. Yeah, so it's affecting both really. So Chiron in 17, which is where Chiron is at the moment, 17 line 6. This is a really visionary Chiron because it's the gift of farsightedness and the city of omniscience, being able to see all things and in any single moment. And it's the shadow of opinion. And then we have the moon is in 21. This is the shadow of control. So those two together, quite interesting, control and opinion, you know, the woo, you know, those are really hard people to be around in those shadows. And then we have the gift of authority in 21 and the valor is the siddhi. So this is all about living a noble life, the 21. So yeah, whether you have Chiron in 18 or 21, on this particular imprinting, both of them have been imprinted by the moon being present. And again, it points towards healing of the feminine when Chiron is conjunct the moon, because the moon is about our yin energy. It's about our subjective way of being. It's also about our connection to our mother, and anything that's passed genetically down the mother line in terms of these imbalances may now also, you know, come to light or become more noticeable as a problem in your own energetic field. Okay, so we're going slowly round the houses here. And here we have Uranus in 24, line 4 at the moment. So at the moment, Uranus is in 24 in the Ajna Centre in a channel with Pluto in the 61. This has been going on for quite some time. Uranus has had a bit of a go in Jinki 2 as well, but has come back to this 24. So this is a powerful time actually of these far-seeing, oracular gifts that may be opening up again. And if we return to the priestess in all of that, these are gifts that genetically were wiped out in millions and millions of women being killed in the witch hunts, but also through many people in the Middle Ages who had these gifts, went into being nuns and monks, so they didn't have children. So in some ways, these oracular gifts are, they may be very, very deep in our DNA, very hidden, because to actually express them at certain times in history would be like sure death, you know, so they're awakening now. And if you already have those gifts active, you may be finding the last few years that they really coming out more and more as you clear the karmic stuff. The gifts are able to manifest more and more. And then we had the nodes here. So the nodes have just moved into the Scorpio Taurus axis. And this calls on us really to simplify. It may signify a real journey into the underworld in the year and a half that these keys are there. Interestingly, on the North Node, we have Ceres, and we actually also have Sedna there. So we have the Mother Goddess. She's very much linked with food, with environmentalism, with nurturing ourselves properly. And Sedna is a goddess of the deep oceans. So for me, this is bringing up quite a lot of environmental themes with her conjunct the North Node there, which is karmically where the energy is moving towards. Now you can see with the nodes here that all the planets and asteroids are this side, apart from on my chart, there are actually some other ones, but Hygeia is one of the only main goddess asteroids on that side of the nodes. And this is called the Sarpa Yoga. It's a rare cosmic event that will finish in April, when Mercury will have traveled all the way through Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, and will pop out the other side of the North Node. And that's when the Sarpa Yoga will be over in April. So until then, we have this very intense karmic clearing. So there's so much about the underworld at the moment, but you know, within that, it feels that Venus, following Venus, staying attuned to her energy, is really important way of staying kind of positive, keeping the frequency up as we go through these tumultuous and chaotic times. And that is going to only increase leading into 2027, when the cross of planning will be replaced by the cross of the sleeping phoenix. So many of the things we've had in the cross of planning through the Industrial Revolution, these are the systems that are starting to crumble all around us, whether that's the systems of money. You know, we see Bitcoin replacing normal currency. We see transport systems crumbling. We see the whole supermarket system is also in complete disarray because of crumbling transport systems. So I wouldn't expect any of these systems to get kind of fixed in the near future, because that's not what the trajectory here is about. It's actually going to be learning about living a much more simple way, a more local way in some ways, in terms of our food and what's accessible to us directly, and having to, you know, but also having these global communities that I'm part of, a few that are absolutely so nourishing and wonderful to my life, thanks to the technology of Zoom and YouTube and all these things. A bit of inspiration is never far away. Yeah, but the whole thing is changing, and we're changing too. Yeah. So that's all I'm going to offer for today. And that feels like a lot really to take in. So well done if you've managed to make it through like all these different things that are happening on Sunday. And I wanted to do them all because it feels like such a important moment in time that I wanted to kind of give it the honor it deserves. So as I've alluded to a few times this year, I'm teaching astrology and facilitating a process of following Venus very closely through the next 18 months, co-creating ceremonies with the other women who have joined that group. And it's on a platform called Soul Tribe Online. It costs, at the moment, it costs $29.99 to join. So join up soon. I'll put the link at Soul Tribe Online. And you get weekly sessions with me. You can join in the 40-day daily, except for Saturday and Sunday. We meet daily for half an hour doing this 40-day cleansing deep in the female energetic body. It's really an amazing, beautiful process, and really beautiful to do with a group of women as well, because we're building the sisterhood, we're building the synarchy together, and we're living the dream of the future. You know, we're allowing life to organize us in these amazing, beautiful, creative ways. So namaste, satnam, go in peace. Bye.